All right.
So I'm super excited to have Jane Windsor here. For years, I've been working with our neuropsychologist who adores Jane Windsor, who is an educational attorney, who, what you're going to explain more about yourself,
Yeah.
who just is really there to, for school rights and helping families. Very passionate. We're so lucky to have her here. So,
Thanks.
Jane, this is you. We're on to
All
you.
right. Well, I adore Dr. Parsons as well, and I've worked with her. I've been doing this 11 years. I always say I'm a new old lawyer or an old new lawyer, depending on how you want to look at it. I used to be a classroom teacher. I raised a 2E kid, although she probably wouldn't admit it today, but she was brilliant and had ADHD and a little bit of a math processing disability. That was easily remediated without an IEP, just a little bit of tutoring. Because the school doesn't want to get your child to the very best they can be. They have a very low standard. They just have to do just enough to get by. And that's part of the problem, but I'm going to tell you how to get that just enough that your child needs, okay? And then where to go to get more when they need more, which likely they will. Anyway, the reason I enjoy working with Dr. Parsons so much, when parents come to me and they say, I'm having all of this problem with the school and they're not doing what they're supposed to do for my child, and I know that's true, I tell them, well, there's really 3 problems that we have to solve. First of all, we have to figure out what your child can and can't do, okay? And a lot of times behavior problems are rooted in asking a child to do something that they literally can't do. Okay, and we have to set them up for success. We've got to figure out what that is. And maybe they can't do it now, but they could do it if they were taught the fundamental things that they have to do first. And so that's really where we use the law under the IDEA or Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act or the ADA to maneuver those services in place for that child. Those services, I think of them like a prescription. Okay, you can't go into CVS or Walmart or into Walgreens and say, I want that, and that off the shelf to the pharmacist, and you better give it to me or else. They can't do it. They can't legally do it. So it's the same way, Karen, you're an attorney, you know this, with the law. You've got to be able to show that your facts match up to the law in order to access those rights. You've got to walk in with your prescription. And that prescription is your 504 or your IEP. And even then, you have to have the diagnosis. And that's where everybody goes wrong. So the school will say, your child's in all of this trouble. Will you sign a release so that we can do some testing? And parents sign the release. The schools do the testing. They do a half you-know-what job at it because they're not qualified. Okay, they just don't know how to test your child for these things that they may have going on. Or if they do it, they don't have the credentials to get the services. What I love about Dr. Parsons is she has all the credentials and she can use all of the testing. And so she has a PhD in developmental psychology and in neuropsychology. So when she comes in and says the child has an F whatever or a, on the DSM-5 code, she knows what that child has and she can prove it. So they may have to do some rudimentary testing afterwards to verify it, and they've got 60 days if it's a new evaluation, or 90 days if it's a reevaluation to get that done. They can't give it to you in 5 minutes, but they do have a certain amount of time on a timeline to get that done. But that's when the clock starts. Okay, if you just sit there and do the dance with the school forever and ever and ever, the clock never starts. And that's really where parents get so frustrated. And I guide them. And as I was telling Tamara, I do about 4 advisory consultations a week. I tell Amy, my assistant, please don't book me for 5. I put about 3 hours into them. And my goal is for people to not necessarily hire me, but to get them off the, the blocks and off and getting what their child needs. I wrote a book about 4 years ago. I personally am dyslexic. I don't spell anything right. My family has made fun of me since I was a child. And I now know about the F7 key and to pay proofreaders to catch all my mistakes, but I co-authored it with a fabulous board certified school board attorney And we wrote it, and I'm going to give it away to you. If you call into my office and leave a message for Amy Landman, my assistant, and leave us your address, we're going to mail you one of these. And it basically,
Jane, can I just get up and they could send it to me and I'll send you the list?
yeah, you just send me a big old list, or I'll take a box, Tamara, to the Florida Center, and you can hand them out. Because as I shared with her, it was kind of cool. I just finished getting these things published, and I was going to send them out to all of the pediatricians in Florida to say, you see these children before we do. The school districts are on the hook for child find. Why don't we work together to get these kids the help they need at the earliest moment possible? Here's a way to do it. And then I sent it to the Florida Bar because I'm a rule follower. I have always been a rule follower. And I said, can I send this to the pediatricians? And they looked at my website and they said, well, Rob Dodig isn't with you anymore. And the book was written when he was with you. So that's an ethical problem. You can't use it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I hadn't even thought about that. He doesn't have a problem with me using it. When COVID hit, he took a job elsewhere closer to home because we just couldn't make it work with him in my practice. And gosh, I'd have given anything if he'd stayed with me. So I've got these books. The universe has made this possible for me to give away a book that I was going to charge for and send out to pediatricians, and you all need it. So I'm happy to give it to you. And it basically explains the process. I'm going to walk you through what this book would teach you. And then I'm going to tell you about the other resources that I make sure every parent that comes into my practice to consult with me, I tell them, get on Amazon and order this book by Pete Wright. It's called From Emotions to Advocacy. It's the most important book you need to have in your library because it explains the law to you and your rights and the timelines and how to hold them accountable. So you no longer go to these IEP meetings and feel like you're powerless. The law is the law, okay? And the facts are unique for every child, but the law doesn't change. And there are basically 3 bodies of law that are going to be used when you are getting a child services in school. And believe it or not, you can get a child too many services. I know that's hard to believe, but you can get a child something they don't need, and then they get pulled out of class when they need to be learning, and you've actually harmed them if you label them up with more things than they actually need. That's why I say the most important thing that you need to do is you need to get, if you can afford it, a private neuropsych. Don't necessarily let the school do it, with somebody really wonderful at this, like Dr. Parsons, who can get in there and figure out everything that is going on with your child. If it's an FAS child, she can figure it out. Even if the biological parent who you adopted said, I never used alcohol, she can figure it out. She can say, yeah, well, it looks like they did. Okay, if they're on the spectrum, she can figure it out. If they have ADD and what kind, she can figure it out. She can get you all of those DSM-5 codes that your child deserves, that's then going to put the school on the hook for the next piece of this. That's where services flow from. Services flow from the diagnosis, but they don't flow automatically from the diagnosis. The school district is the keeper of federal funds, and they cannot just arbitrarily assign a service to a child, even though they have a diagnosis, without verifying. They have to do that. So there are 3 bodies of law, as I've mentioned. We have the ADA, which is seldom used in school, but sometimes. And then that's kind of the overriding law. And then underneath that, we have 2 school laws. We have Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. It's a federal law, but it comes with no money. It comes with no funding to deliver services. So the schools are on the hook to deliver services, but they don't want to do it because they don't have the money to do it. Okay. And then we have the IDEA, which are federal funds, and they come with money. Okay. And that's what gives you your IEP. Okay. Every one of those IEP services has money attached to it. Okay. And you hear about things like matrix dollars. That's how you get your matrix number. That is portable money that you can take your child out and put them into a private school under McKay. So you have to follow the process. The process is the same for everybody. Okay, so step 1 is you need, if you can afford it, and I tell parents that come to me all the time, if you can't afford me and Dr. Parsons, get Dr. Parsons, okay? Because I can't do what I do without a great private neuropsych, by somebody who knows what they're doing. She's in Sarasota. If you're in Palm, if you're wherever you are, ask her to give you the name of somebody who's good. She knows everybody in the state.
Jane, a lot of these families are getting the FASD evaluation, which includes neuropsychological evaluations, speech language pathologist evaluation, and
everything. Oh my gosh,
it's really comprehensive.
Oh my gosh. So, and then when they partner with me, what I do is I go back and I have parents sign a release so that I can go to all the schools, and I go to schools all over the country. Parents move in from Washington State, they move in from Oregon, and they're like, how did you get my kids' records? I'm like, I'm an attorney. I send them a piece of paper that says you got to send this to me, or they know I can sue them. They send me those records. I get those records, I get them organized, I get them over to her, and she'll do a 30-page report or a 20-page report. The first 10 pages are the medical history, the school history, the family history, all of this stuff. And then she knows exactly what tools to pull out of her toolbox to test, to figure out what's going on with this child. What can they do? What can't they do? IQ is one factor. Okay, I have had kids with IQs in the 130s, but they have so many other issues that they can't access their education without certain things in place. They may have a hearing problem, they may have an auditory processing problem. We've got to figure out why they're not able to do it. And then we can make it possible. Okay, and then of course, there's also the other piece that's huge, which is the behavior piece. I'll ask parents, do you have a behavior plan, a BIP? A PBIP is what they should be called, a positive behavior intervention plan. Okay, a PBIP isn't kid training. A PBIP is teacher training. Okay, so if they're sending your kid home every day, your child just got what they wanted. They outsmarted everybody in that school. Okay, they don't want to learn. They're asking them to do something that's too hard for them right now. They're going to act up. They get out of class. They get a pass. They win. They send them home. And one of the parents here said, my child's at Oak Park. What Oak Park does that's right, I didn't used to be a fan of Oak Park. I actually am now. I've seen them do a lot of things right over the years. They push a team in. So that child doesn't get the positive payoff that they want of getting pulled out of class. They get somebody that'll sit down and break it down at a level that they can understand, make it something that they can actually do in that setting, calm them down, give them some calming down strategies, do whatever they need to do so that they can make it work. Okay, if a child is getting sent home, and especially if it's being done more than 10 times in a year, that's considered a change of placement. Whether they've changed schools or not, that's considered a constructive change of placement. Your child can't learn if they're not in school. They've just changed their academic environment if they're sending them home. So anyway, I tell parents, there's nothing magic about what I do. I get the parents who hire me to the front of the line. I don't communicate with the teacher. I don't communicate with the principal. As a matter of fact, I could lose my license if I did, because I would be communicating with somebody who's represented by counsel. They are covered and protected by their school board attorney or their teachers union or whatever. I go straight to the ESE director and the attorney for the school district with a release that says, I'm representing this family. We'd like to come together and work cooperatively to get Joey or Susie what they need. Here is a private neuropsych from Dr. Parsons or from one of the people that I also respect. And it says the following diagnosis, okay? It appears that Johnny or Susie needs such and such in their IEP and it's not there. Can we come together and have a meeting? And I also believe that they would benefit from a functional behavior analysis done by a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst, who can come in and figure out why this child's doing what they're doing, what we want them to do instead, and we can build a plan for the teacher to follow, that they will follow, that will turn around the child's behavior so that they can attend and learn. Okay, these are the tools in the toolbox that every parent has that they don't know that they have to help their child access their education at the highest possible level. Now, when you have a child with a learning exceptionality, and we know that at least 30% of our student population, people like Tamara and me, we thought we were normal for a long time. And you know what? We weren't. We weren't neurotypical. We just thought we were. But we weren't such a big pain in the neck that the teachers were sending us home. We just weren't getting good grades and we were frustrated and we maybe hated school. But we know so many of these kids have these problems that have not been identified. And a teacher is just, most teachers today are overwhelmed. They are, they got 25 kids. They are on the hook to get these kids to deliver performance during FSA testing. And when a child's acting up, they can't do their job, they're frustrated. We're going to teach them how to get, this child to behave in their class so that everybody wins. I always say I have the best job in the world. When you do what I ask, everybody wins. The child wins, the school wins, the parents win. The school gets a higher grade because the children are doing better on their testing. It's not rocket science, it's a process. And it's a process, if I can teach you to follow it, anybody can follow it. It starts with a neuropsych. I can't even believe that you guys have this at your fingertips. This is a game changer. Okay, and then that neuropsych has to go in electronically. Don't hand it to these people. If you hand it to them, you can never prove that they received it. You have to have electronic proof. Once that electronic proof goes in, they're on the hook. If it's a first-time evaluation, they've got 60 days to get what you need in place. If it's a reevaluation that's different from a prior evaluation, they have 90 days. Those are 90 calendar days. Those are not 90 school days, with the exception of Christmas, times where people are out of school and nobody can perform. So if you want to know about these timelines, this goes into it a little bit, as much as it can in 30 pages. Get Pete Wright's From Emotions to Advocacy. That law is there at your fingertips to protect you and to protect your child. And then they have to do it. And then the third piece is, so you get a neuropsych, you get the IEP calibrated properly to your child's needs, and then you have to have fidelity to plan. That's what I make happen when parents hire me. When the teacher doesn't follow it, or there's a sub and there's a meltdown, I'm on the phone with the attorney and the ESC director, and we get it fixed immediately. You may not be able to get that part to work entirely by yourself, but I will teach you how to do that. You highlight the child services that are on the IEP and laminate a copy of that, put it in their backpack. When your child needs to have time and a half for a test, you have them carry that up to the teacher and say, Miss So-and-so, you're a sub, you don't know, we're going to take a test today. If they can communicate, this is what I need you to be aware of. If they're unable to communicate, you get to email the teacher and tell her these things. If she doesn't do it, then you go to the principal and you say, this didn't happen. But that's how this happens. It has to be a team that's working together, that's all communicating off the same song sheet, and that song sheet is going to be a Parsons report or a similar report. Does that make sense? I hope I've just given you, a very fast walk through the 504 and the IDEA very quickly, and I know you all have questions, and I want to leave you plenty of time for those questions, but does that process make sense?
I have a question for you, Jane, because I was under the impression, so sometimes in order to, when I was working at the school, they're like, you need to go through the tier system before you, but can a parent bypass this and write a note to the ESE liaison to say that they want to get their child? Oh, because I was under the impression that they could kind of jumpstart it and not go through the tier.
Yeah, you can sign those consent forms and they can move it a little faster. Okay, but here's the problem, and everybody makes this mistake. Let's say you've signed a consent form for the school team to do an evaluation on your child. And then you realize they're not doing a good job, or you have somebody that's not qualified. Then you take them to Dr. Parsons for an evaluation. If she pulls the same testing that they do, it invalidates each other. Then you've got to wait 6 months to a year. You've basically canceled them out. This is why I tell parents, don't sign a consent for the school to do it yet. Get it done privately by somebody who knows what they're doing. Then take that into the school. And then, yes, they have to do the tier 1, 2, and 3. And I am amazed at how many parents don't know, and they have kids in high school, what tier 1, 2, and 3 is about. Please let me explain that to you. Okay, Tier 1 is a regular classroom. That's what every child gets. Every child that steps foot in school, sits down at the desk, gets Tier 1. That's basic teaching. Tier 2 might give you a 504. Tier 2 is going to say, we're going to try, the child didn't learn it this way. We're going to try this informally. We're going to go back and reteach it. And if they get it, then they've got it. We're done. That's maybe time and a half. That's maybe letting them redo their homework. That's Tier 2. That is a 504. They move in and out of Tier 1 to Tier 2, but they never need specialized instruction. That's going to give you a 504. Some kids are so bright that they are able to access their education through just Tier 2.
Can you explain 504 again? There's a parent who's asking about that. A 504.
Okay. 504 is a civil rights law, okay? And it basically gives your child access to Tier 2, okay? A little bit of extra help, maybe accommodations. Maybe they just need, extra time on an exam. That's a 504, but it comes with no money to deliver the specialized instruction. It just comes with duties, extra work for the teacher, but no relief to make her job easier. Does that make sense? Okay, more stuff she's got to do. It's like, okay, I did such a good job in my job that they just gave me more work to do, but they're not paying me anymore. Okay, oh boy, am I glad I did that. I mean, that's basically how a teacher's going to feel. I've got to do all these extra things for this child, but they're not giving me what I need to deliver that. A 504 is going to give you, the extra support, the specialized instruction, and the money to maybe deliver a one-on-one if the child needs it, or extra services that child needs. Okay, that is where the funding comes in. But this is the rub. The school district is a recipient of federal funds under the IDEA. Okay, in order to have those federal funds, there's a check and balance system. That's the Tier 1, 2, and 3 intervention. They have to prove and collect the data over those 30 to 60 days to prove that child actually needs and benefits and is detrimentally affected if they don't get those Tier 3 interventions. You have 13 categories, and they're in this book, under which you can get an IEP. Only 13. A 504, you've got way more, way easier to get a 504 than it is a IEP. Now, here's what nobody knows. Parent will say, well, my child just has ADD. I guess they don't get an IEP. Wrong. They can have an IEP. It's under other health impaired. Okay, it's not under one of those other 12 enumerated disabilities. It's under other health impaired, which is a very broad, definition. And we can get an IEP for a child with ADHD if they need it, if they meet the Tier 3 intervention criteria, which they very often do, under other health impaired. But there's two pieces to that. You have to have the neuropsych from Dr. Parsons, who is not an MD. She's a PhD, a double PhD and board certified. And you have to go to your family doctor, your pediatrician, and they have to sign a medical form saying that they have a medical diagnosis of ADHD. Then you get your IEP under other health impaired. You have to have those two steps under other health impaired. And without it, the school can't give it to you. So just take the form to the doctor, have the doctor sign it, fax it back into the school, and then you're done. So I don't know if I answered your question or not, but that's the difference between those two.
And there is a question going back to collecting the data. What if the teacher refuses to collect the data?
They're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to do that. Then the school will have to send somebody else in to collect the data. Okay, and that's fine. They probably will. And that's usually what happens is they'll send somebody in to observe in the classroom. It won't be the teacher. Usually it's not the teacher because she can't teach the class and be writing all this stuff down. It's usually going to be somebody sitting in the back of the classroom. The kids see the stranger coming in and they wonder who they're there for. So what? It happens all the time. Teacher just goes on about her business, and she's watching little Johnny and what he's doing and counting, or he's watching how many times they get out of their seat, what they're doing to be brought back on task. You know, sometimes I ask for a fidelity audit where they go in and they look at that IEP and they tell me, they follow that child throughout the whole day and tell me how many times that teacher follows that IEP. Okay, if there's not a fidelity to plan, it's not going to work. I look for at least 80 to 85% fidelity to plan. It's impossible to be 100%. Nobody can be 100%. Okay, but if they are doing it most of the time, the vast majority of the time, the child's going to come on board, so long as they have the IQ or the underlying skills to do what they're being asked to do. Okay, that's why that neuropsych guides us on what the child can and can't do. Does that make sense?
There's another question. What if they don't give you, what if they don't give you the form for the pediatrician to fill out? So you're saying get a letter from the pediatrician, they have a neuropsychological.
They still have to file, they have to sign that particular form. It's under IDEA. Then you call the ESE director for your county, Sonia Figueroa Alberts in Sarasota. It's Nicole Cox for Manatee County. Wherever you are, there's an ESE director. You go straight to your school district's website and you put in ESE director. Look at their name. They should have an email address. And you're going to say, dear Miss So-and-so or Dr. So-and-so, I'm a parent of a child named whatever at this school. I have been fighting with my school district since this date. We have a full neuropsych. Here it is, by the way, that was submitted to the school on such and such a date, and my child still doesn't have an IEP. I have gone to my doctor. My doctor's willing to sign this form, and the school won't give it to me. Can you please get me this form so that I can get that IEP? You'll have it in 24 hours. Okay, I guarantee you, you'll have it in 24 hours. Okay, they have to do it. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I have a question back to these tiers, because I was thinking of when I used to work at a school. There were kids that were in this tier system for years, and they never got an IEP to like second grade, and they were getting kicked out of their classroom. And so what?
They have 60 days on a new evaluation, 90 days on a reevaluation, and the district knows that I know it. It happens on my watch.
So a new evaluation, 60 days to complete the tier system?
Yes.
Oh.
And then come back to the table and put what's in place. So if a parent hires me, and I'm not plugging for my law firm, I told you I have plenty of clients. I love that I have plenty of clients, but I am, if a parent comes to me and says, Jane, I need your help. And I've had attorneys come to me and teachers and principals come to me that have been pulling their hair out going, why can't I do this on my own? And I said, this is all I do, you know, and it's almost, I couldn't teach my own daughter to swim. And I was a really good swim instructor. It's very hard to do this for your own child. That doesn't mean you're inadequate as a parent. It's just hard. They don't take you seriously, unfortunately. And you don't even know how to ask the question in the right way so that they've got to give you the answer that you need. So it's very, you know, I say the process is the process. It's simple. It's not easy. It's not easy. And I recognize that. So, you know, but with me, I can tell them this is the amount of time you have. Okay. And so when parents hire me, they either hire me maybe to go to one meeting. I tell them I'm not going to just show up at a meeting. That's worthless, because as soon as I'm gone, they're going to go back to their sorry old ways. You're going to hire me for 5 hours. I'm going to get the records. The attorney's going to get notice that I just got the records. They know that I'm in there sniffing around and they better send me everything. Okay. And then when I show up at that meeting, I can say, do you realize that this child has been in and out of tier 2 and 3 interventions for the last 3 years and they don't have an IEP? What's your problem? You know, and as a matter of fact, here's what this says. And they start doing it real fast. And because I know what I'm looking for. And then I have parents that will hire me and they'll say, you know, Jane, I can't afford you annually, but I just need to get this IEP done and I need them to follow it. I tell them that's 10 hours. You know, usually that's 10 hours. Okay, I send Dr. Parsons the record. She does the testing. I go back to the school with the testing. Then I go with the parent to 2 or 3 meetings. that follow that 60 to 90 days, and we get it in place and we get the teachers trained. Okay, and then it's followed. If they hire me at the beginning of the year, I'm going to have that IEP in place by Christmas, and it's going to be followed. If they hire me after Christmas, I'll have it in place by the end of the year. I mean, you can't take nine. I tell parents, you can't take 9 women and make a baby in a month. It still takes 9 months and 1 person. You know, we can't do it quicker. I can't make a school district break the law. I can't make them write a check for federal funds without verifying it, or they're going to lose all their federal funds. They're not going to do that for you, but I can make them follow the law, and I can teach you the law. Okay, and you can make them follow the law. So it's not rocket science. You can do it. My book breaks it down into really simple steps. These kids need help. And if they don't get the help they need, they're not going to make it in life. Okay. And this is why this is so important.
So Jane, I have a question. So going back to, there was a parent who was saying it took her, all year it took us almost an entire school year to make it through the school's process of getting a kiddo to tier 3. So my question for you is, would it be the same answer as before, that you then contact the ESE director, go, here's the neuropsych, here is the doctor's note, this child's been in tier 3 for 8 months, he's not getting an IEP, and so that's who they talk to, that's the next person.
Yep. There may be all the 67 ESE directors may take a contract out on me next week for telling you this, but yes, that's how you do it. Okay. That's how you do it. Okay, that's how I do it. And I don't fight with them. They know I'm probably not going to take them to due process and cost them a whole bunch of money. I'm just going to make them do what they should have been doing all along. Okay. And, I'm also going to get the parent not to scream and holler in an IEP meeting, because that doesn't accomplish anything. I tell the parents when they hire me, I've got 3 jobs to do. First thing I got to do is I have to convince you to get a private neuropsych. Okay, I will withdraw from representing a parent. I don't care what they've paid me if they don't get a private neuropsych. I can't do my job without that piece of paper to guide me, because I don't know what to fight for. Okay, the second thing I have to do is I have to sometimes send my parents to charm school, because by the time they've gotten angry enough to call me, they're at their wits' end, and they probably haven't behaved in one of those meetings because they have been provoked to the point where they have lost it. Okay, you don't want to do that. Okay, when I go with you to a meeting, you get to be the good cop, I get to be the bad cop. Okay, and I'm still nice. I just don't let them get away with stuff that they shouldn't get away with. Then the third thing that we have to do is we have to give the teachers the support they need to be able to deliver what your child needs. Okay, if they can't do it under a 504, the tier 3 interventions will allow them to get an IEP in place and give them the tools to do what they probably wanted to do all along, but they didn't have the tools. Now, here's the other problem. You want to know how much ESE training most classroom teachers have had? Zilch, nada, bagel, none. Okay, it's awful. It's awful. So you're asking somebody to do something that they don't know how to do. So we have to train them. We have to train them. Once we get that IEP in place, the last couple of pages of that IEP are the services. When they have a Parsons report, they put her recommendations right in that IEP. Gives her the directions to be able to know. It's basically the Chilton's manual on your child. This is what you do if something goes wrong. Here's what to test. Here's what to do. Here's how to redirect. And this is what's going to work. And what's really cool about it is once you give them that tool and it works, their jobs get easier. Their jobs get so much easier. They just don't know how to put these pieces together on their own. It's not that hard. The process is the process. So you've got the most important piece at your fingertips now with Dr. Parsons. God love her for being willing to do this. Okay, that's the most important piece. Then you're gonna, I hope, arm yourself with this, but I basically told you what this book is gonna tell you. You're going to arm yourself with that. You're going to go get yourself Pete Wright's book on From Emotions to Advocacy. And he has a chapter in there. It's either 24 or 27, the letter to a stranger, and basically how you write the ESE director and you tell her everything that's going wrong, and you pull out all the adjectives where you're calling people names, okay? And all of the emotional stuff that just makes you look like a whack job, okay? You get it very clinical. And when you do, they're going to listen to you, and they're going to start doing what they're supposed to do. Okay, it's and that's why an attorney can sometimes do something that you can't as a parent do, is because we can detach a little bit and look at it more analytically than you're able to when it's your own precious child. Does that make sense?
I have another question that was submitted. If a school lost an IEP that I submitted to them 3 different times when we changed school districts, and my child went 90 days with no IEP when she entered the new district, is there any repercussion for the school? What is the time frame if there are repercussions?
Okay, so what I call that is comp ed. There wasn't a lot of comp ed during COVID, because it's kind of hard to hold somebody responsible for delivering something that they couldn't do, But what I did, comp ed in terms of money, what I did is I would keep track of the speech or the language or the OT or whatever the child was supposed to get in minutes. And I would make sure if they were getting 30 minutes a week that they got 40 instead. So we would find a way to make it up. Does that make sense? So if your child, it's a basic math problem. You look on that IEP. I hope you submitted it electronically, because if you just handed it to them, of course they lose it. Okay, you've got to scan it and get it in electronically. Then you go back and you email the ESE director and say, here's a copy of the email I sent to the principal on this date, and these are the services my child should have been getting from that date. Clearly they knew my child has suffered as a result. What are we going to do? To fix this problem. Okay, we can come at this 2 ways. Okay, the school district's gotten the money to deliver these services. They got it in the coffers. Okay, so, and you're entitled to it. You can say to them, I have a private OT, speech, whatever, that can deliver this at $30 an hour. You can $50 an hour, $150 an hour, whatever it is. And they were shorted X number of dollars. I'm willing to take them in privately over the summer, pay my mileage, do whatever to catch them up. You willing to make payments directly to that person? Or would you like for me to bring my child in and you can make it up on Zoom at home or at the school? How are we going to take care of this problem?
So I'm going to go back to asking the same question because I think this keeps on happening. So the parent who's sharing, she said that it was submitted electronically. So once she realized that there's this gap, she's going to do all the math to calculate what was missing. Then she's going to first talk to the ESE liaison. If she gets nothing in that school, go to the ESE director. Go to the ESE director.
Start there. Because the ESE liaison has no authority. No authority. Okay, so when you get from emotions to advocacy, there's a page in there that tells you all of the participants have to be in an IEP meeting. When I show up, they're all there. When you show up, they short you a couple. Okay, and you don't know. I've had parents hire me to say, I want all the teachers there. Well, they don't have to send all the teachers. They just have to send 1 or 2, Okay, I can't get you something you're not legally entitled to. Those teachers all need to be teaching class. But they do have to have somebody. They have to have the LEA, the local educational person, who is the keeper of the funds, okay? Because they have the authority to give you that. Your person at your school level doesn't. They don't. You're asking them to do something for you that they don't have the authority to do.
Okay, one last question with this. What is the time frame if there are repercussions? So let's just say this happened not during COVID, but the parent didn't know the rights. So let's just say it happened a year ago. Is it 2 or more than a year ago? Is it
you have a 2-year statute of limitations. You have a 1-year statute of limitations on a state complaint. When they hand you your procedural safeguards when you walk into that meeting and they ask you to sign that you've got your procedural safeguards. They send it with every meeting, your procedural safeguards. You all know what I'm talking about?
We've got some people shaking their head. Some
Okay.
people we can't see.
Okay, so your procedural safeguards are your rights. You have 504 rights, and then you have IEP, IDEA rights. Okay, that's a procedural safeguards. That basically tells you what you get to do to them to push back if they don't do what they're supposed to do. Read it. I want you to read that. All of your homework assignment tonight is to ask your school district for a copy of your procedural safeguards. So, and then you're going to read it and highlight it. Okay, and it tells you what you get to do them. So you have a 2-year statute of limitations on a due process complaint, which you can file against them if they haven't done what they're supposed to do. You have a 1 year on a state complaint. You got half a year on an Office of Civil Rights complaint. Okay, so you have only a certain amount of time. You can only go back 2 years from when you knew or should have known that the child should have been receiving these services. Okay, did I answer your question?
I think so. If you didn't, people can be writing questions in the chat box if she didn't answer anything. Yes, you did. Thank you. Any other specific questions? This is a good time. We've got about a half hour left. And if you want, you can also just go off of mute if you don't mind being filmed, or you can put it in the chat box. No, but that's good to know. So the main person, the ESE director, is a good person to know.
Yeah, they're all going to go, oh my God, Jane, why'd you do this to me? Well, you know what? You don't get to sit in your ivory tower. You're here, you know, you're in a job to help these children. You have to help these kids. You have to. And most of the ones that I know are wonderful. Believe it or not, I've been in their face screaming at them, you know, sometimes in the beginning of our relationship. I've been doing this 11 years. Most of them now, we get along great. You know, I have their cell phone numbers. They've got my cell phone numbers. I'm like, oh, come on, you know, let's do such and such. And they do it. They do it. They're really not, I don't think most people go into this field that don't have a heart for these children. Now, unfortunately, they're overworked. They don't have enough money to go around. You know, it is an incredibly hard job. I'm not justifying their actions if something, I'm looking at this. So if we ask for data on what accommodations are being used to determine effectiveness, okay, yes, they have to give you that data. I couldn't see the rest of the question. It only was truncated. I could only see part of it.
The ESE director if it's not happening?
Yeah, I would. And ask her to come to the meeting, the next meeting. Let's just say this is just, I'm getting stonewalled.
Sonia Figueroa. Sonia Figueroa.
Yeah, Sonia Figueroa Alberts is the Executive Director of Pupil Support Services in Sarasota County. Nicole Cox is in Manatee County. Just go to your district website and put in ESE director.
I have a question with getting an IEP. So some of these kiddos that have been evaluated, they can't qualify for a diagnosis of FASD because there's maybe not confirmed alcohol exposure. So
Yeah.
These drug exposed children with a lot of trauma are kind of left with a diagnosis that's kind of not always so clear cut. And so,
Yeah.
but they're having a lot of brain-based challenges. And so I was just wondering, first of all, if it's difficult to use getting the diagnosis of trauma as like other health impaired or even FASD, or it's hard to get. And so, you know, maybe they'll do ADHD, but they won't do all these others, or they'll because one of the problems we kick in is with FASD, I'm asking a lot of questions. With FASD, they might they might use other, like a learning disability rather than FASD, but that learning disability doesn't incorporate all of the challenges of FASD, like executive functioning and things like that.
Yeah.
So I'm
Well,
just
a Parsons report will grab everything. I mean, she gets it all in there, you know, and so she'll break down things like working memory, processing speed, all of those things. And you can see when you start to see a child is, you know, down in the, you know, 14th percentile, I don't care what the IQ is, they can't do this stuff. Okay, and that's where the specialized instruction will help them. Okay, let me give you a good example. Let's say you have a child who's plenty smart, they have the math fundamentals, but they're up until 1 o'clock in the morning trying to get their homework done. Okay, because they just don't have the horsepower at 8 o'clock at night when their stimulant medication is worn off to get that to grind through that anymore. They're done. Okay, so a very reasonable accommodation that I get all the time is get that homework cut in half or in thirds. If they're getting it on 2 problems, they don't need 20. Okay, that's ridiculous. That's a very easy accommodation to get. And it's not like they're going to be really, you know, robbed of something, you know, by not being forced to stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning getting their homework done. That's where that neuropsych basically matched up on that IEP with services that can only be verified and put in place after tiered interventions works.
I have another thing that's come up often, and I just want to know what the legal rule is. Sometimes we've looked at IEPs and they're not always retesting, and they'll just use the testing that's been done previously. So what is the law for, like, how often do they need to test IQ? Every 3 years?
Yeah, every 3 years. A lot of times, like an ASD child, they'll have a much higher IQ than will show up, but it'll show up later. So I tell parents, like a lot of times parents will get a testing done in junior high school. And I tell them, don't let this testing go out of date more than 3 years. So just go in and get a pit stop test done with Dr. Parsons or somebody like her before the 3-year mark. Okay, and she'll know, she doesn't have to redo everything. She'll know exactly what she has to go in and redo. Okay, and the IEP expires every 3 years. That's why you should have a meeting at least once a year. Okay, so that it never expires. But the testing itself, you want to get the testing redone at least every 3 years, at least a minimal amount of it. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, but sometimes it doesn't happen and they're using IQ from way back. And so I just wanted to make sure.
Again, that's where, you know, sometimes I can sound hard-nosed and I don't mean to. But I have this conversation with people. I'm like, you either brought this child into this world or you made the decision to adopt them. You're their only advocate. You have to do this for them. You have to do this for them. Okay, you don't have to hire me, but you have to do this for this child. Okay, because the school can't give you what you want without it. And are you going to trust these people you're fighting with every day to get it right? I don't think they purposely get it wrong. I mean, I've seen Sonia, bless her heart, has been looked at me like, Jane, we have good people. Why are you making your people spend money on this? We'll do it for free. I was like, because I don't exactly trust them to get it right. You don't have a Dr. Parsons. There's only 1 or 2 of her in the state. They're hard to find. No offense. I'm not trying to be.
I was putting this in the notes. Some people know Dr. Parsons. We also have 2 other wonderful psychologists who work with Nancy, with Dr. Parsons. So if you don't have Dr. Parsons, do not feel like you don't have a great neuropsychologist.
No, you have great ones. I have other names. I think Veronica Medina over at Carter Psych is fantastic. I think Dr. Stevenson is fantastic. There are other great ones. And she can give you names. If you're not in Sarasota and you need a local, she knows everybody in the state.
Yeah.
She can give you the name of somebody who's fantastic. So, you know, they're going to find that person for you. Absolutely.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure because
I wish I could clone her.
Who knows Dr. Parsons and half might have gotten somebody else. And
and you know what? They can be just as good. She has trained people to write reports that are just as good as her. So, you know, please don't let me diminish that. But It took me about 5 years of practice before I found her. And I'll tell you how I found her. It was really funny. I was reading some of the cases where the school districts were losing due process cases. And I was reading the cases where they were winning them. And I was like, why are they winning these? Well, they have a better chance of winning because they have a better legal team. And it was when they were right, and they would bring somebody like a Dr. Parsons in as an expert. And I'd start reading the testing that they did to verify that the school district got it right. I was like, well, that's who I need to send my parents to. That's pretty simple. They're not going to say this person doesn't have the credentials when they've used them themselves as an expert. So they never question her reports. They just, as soon as they get it, they start doing what they're supposed to do. And I want you all to have that. It's going to make it so much easier.
Well, it's so Carol had asked if I've already talked to Dr. Parsons about presenting here, so you're good. Chris, another parent, she was saying that her school said that, at our school, they said that IQ doesn't change, and they have only retested one of my children. They always use old IQ information. It made me think that is the norm.
Well, let me tell you where my IQ, the first time it was tested, my first term of law school, was 104, which is barely high enough to be in law school, but it was because I had dyslexia, ADHD, and I'm on the autism spectrum, and I had all kinds of things going on and some trauma that kept that test from really showing where I could be. It was tested a couple of years ago. 10 years later, it's 128. That's not supposed to happen.
Well,
okay, so it's not a static score. It's not a static score.
And the problem that kicks in with FASD is as they get older, you start seeing really a bigger gap. And so I've seen a lot of kids with IQs that have actually gone down to even below 70, and they had no idea. They thought it was in the norm because it never got retested.
Right. And I have a parent like that who used a Parsons report that has the exact same thing with that child. And so, yes, you want to get it retested. And he was having behavior problems because there were things he couldn't do that they expected him to be able to do. So we had to modify that.
There's a parent who was saying she's looking for the ESE director in Flagler County, and she's not getting a name in there. So
is that St. John's? Is that St. John's, or is that different?
No.
Hold on.
Flagler. Do you know?
Flagler.
Flagler.
Yes, I think the name of Timothy King in a Google search, but I'm not sure that that's it, and I can't find it on their school site.
Okay,
it's round and round.
Well, Flagler County. Here's what I need to know. Okay, Flagler, Flagler School District?
Yeah, what I put in Flagler County School District, it brings me to the flaglerschools.com website. And that's where I'm going around.
That'll work. Yep, here it is, Flagler School. So you're in the right spot. Let me find it for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let me find it for you. That's all right. Don't worry, I do this every day, so I'm a little faster at it than you'll be, but maybe not. Maybe I'll make a liar out of myself. Okay, so there's a little 4-bar thing in the midst. Okay, about us, school board departments. Okay, now we're going to go to departments. Second one down says exceptional student education. See it?
And I got the names of the people I have my meetings with all the time that don't do anything. It drives me bonkers.
Here it is. Flagler Schools, ESE Parent Advisory Council.
They don't have any names.
No, elementary school contacts, middle school, virtual school. Okay, it should be key contacts below can be reached at. Here's the phone number. Staffing specialist.
Yeah, see, that's just going to take me.
I would call Amy Mock and say, Amy, who's the ESE director? Because she's the secretary. Who's the director for the school district?
Okay, I have to ask.
Okay, because they don't have her listed because maybe they're getting too many calls like me, telling parents like you to find them. But they are, you can yank them out of their ivory tower and make them do their job. That's not the worst thing in the world. That's what they're there for.
Okay.
And
They
you know
probably
what?
do get a lot of complaints.
Yeah, well, and I don't want them to get a complaint. That doesn't serve anybody. Let me tell you what happens when you file a due process complaint. And I've done in 11 years, 6 of them. Okay, I've lost one and all the others have settled. I hate them. Only thing you get when you file a due process complaint and win is your attorney gets their attorney fees and your child who hates school gets to go to school a couple extra hours a day. Okay, we haven't solved the problem. We haven't really solved the problem. Okay, we got a lawyer in here and I bet she probably agrees with me. Going to court, straight to court, very rarely solves the problem. Okay, building a team around a child who cares about that child to help that child, that's what solves the problem. That's what I want to teach you to do. And I want to give you the law and show you how to do it. The law and basically the directions, which are Dr. Parsons or a similarly qualified person to do the testing, to guide them. To guide them. Once you have that, you got what you need to get it done. It's still going to take a little bit of time because they have to verify that what you're asking for the child needs. They have to verify that what you're asking for is actually going to work, or make adjustments to it, because sometimes it does need some tweaking. You know, if you went to a psychiatrist and the psychiatrist said you're depressed and you would benefit from Prozac, okay, and because of your weight and age, this is the number of milligrams that you want, you're not going to go into the pharmacist and take that one pill and fix it. You're going to probably have to ramp up to it. It's going to probably take 2 or 3 weeks to get it right. You might have to adjust it a little bit. You might have to adjust the time of day. You might have to, you know, you're going to, that's what an IEP is. It's not a silver bullet. Okay. It's basically a set of directions for people to follow that will work. And sometimes we have to tweak it. Anybody that's ever raised a child, mine's 35 years old, the parenting skills that worked at 3 don't work at 13. You have to adjust it every step of the way. I always used to laugh with my daughter. I thought just about the time I figured out what worked with her, it didn't work anymore. It had an expiration date and I had to go find something else that would work. That's kind of what an IEP is. You better not have those same goals year after year after year. If you have those same goals every year and they're not changing them and addressing the problem and then coming in with new goals, you don't have a good IEP. It's always going to be a living, working document that's changed and adjusted.
Okay, I have another question. What options are available if the school has received and accepted a neuropsych evaluation from Dr. Parsons as their set of directions, but the school disregards the recommendations?
Then you go to that ESE director. Okay, you just go to that ESE director and you get your From Emotions to Advocacy book. You pull out Letter to a Stranger, use that as your guide, and you're going to type a very non-emotional letter that gives them all the facts and the timelines. Okay, and I'm going to tell you, he or she is going to be mad. They're going to come in there and they're going to start making it happen because they're going to know what you can do to them if they don't. Okay, and then if that doesn't work, let me tell you something else you can do to them. Okay, there's something called a Gebser letter. You can write the superintendent. Okay, just Google Gebser, Gebser letter and say, you know what, dear superintendent, these are all the things I've done to help my child. Okay, and they're not doing what they're supposed to do. I've even gone to your ESE director and they're not doing what they're supposed to do. So I'm going to give you some time to fix this. And if you don't fix it, then I see a willful and wanton conduct on your part and I can hold you financially responsible.
What's
that? You're not doing your job.
Can you repeat that again, Jane? What's it called?
Okay, I'm going to have the world literally, if I'm not dead next week, I'll be very surprised. Gebser, Gebser, Gebser letter. Basically, you're going to go to daddy and mama and you're going to tattle on all the brothers and sisters. You're going to make an in run to the top person and say, we're not doing this. You're going to the judge. You know, we're not doing this anymore. Gebser, Gebser letter.
A Gebser letter. Okay.
Okay, but don't start there. Don't ever start there. Okay, because then you can't undo it. That's like I always say, hopefully nobody's children are listening. Okay, this is like going to your husband and saying, I hate your bloody guts. I'm never going to sleep with you again. I want a divorce. In fact, I've been out having multiple affairs and I'm a lot happier not being home with you anymore because you're just such a piece of, you know what? And then the next week you come back and say, honey, would you mind buying me some roses and taking me out to dinner? Because I love you. And by the way, maybe we might want to get a little romantic tonight. It ain't going to happen. Okay. You don't work that way. You can't work that way. Relationships don't work that way. The best way to help your child is, I'm not sure I want that on YouTube, but whatever. You know, the best way to help your child is to motivate everybody on that team to care for your child and to care for you. You know, I tell parents, let me be the bad you but in the IEP meeting, you bring the brownies when we get out of COVID and we start, you know, you bring the snacks and start treating these people like they're the most important people in the world because they're going to want to do more for your child. Your child's hard to teach. They bring a lot of extra work. We have to make it fun for them, just like we have to make it fun for your child to go to school. We have to make it easier for them. Okay? We don't need to be indicting them for everything they do wrong every second. Give them the tools they need, and then give them the money they need to do the job. That IEP will do it. That's how this works. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we have like just a couple more minutes. Is there any last questions from the group? This would be a good time to ask. And once again, the name of your book, what's it called?
Oh, it's just called Special Education Success. Nothing really, you know, unique or special about it. It's just, I thought, what am I trying to accomplish here? I'm trying to show parents how this works. How do you do this? Okay, I'll just read through the table of contents. What is special education? I break it down. What other assistance is available besides an IEP or a 504 for students with special needs? Okay, there's a lot of other stuff out there that sometimes you can do on your own. What is early intervention? I would assume anybody adopted out of foster care would have or have had some early intervention, but a lot of parents don't know what that is, especially if you've gotten a child, you know, later in life. How much information does my child's school and teacher need to know? If your child has, you know, been the victim of sexual trauma and child abuse and whatever, you might want to be guarded with some of that information. Okay, this guides you kind of on what do you want to share, what do you not want to share. The psychoeducational evaluations are neuropsychological evaluations. I have 2 pages on that and what those are. How will I know if the school did a thorough job testing my child, and how long do they have to get the testing completed? That's important. Okay, that gives you the timeline. Once the testing is completed, how long before my child gets the services they need? Okay, that's the timeline. How does Windsor law go about getting my child the services they need and deserve? Okay, that's how we go about it. It's not the way every attorney in the state does, but it's how we approach it. We have 3 different ways that we work with people. Why would a parent of a student with ADHD or a learning disability need to hire an attorney? Okay, well, because sometimes you pulled your hair out and it's not working. Okay, why would they want to choose us? We kind of talk about what we do differently, but if somebody calls into my office and they can't afford to sit down with me, there's some good legal aid attorneys out there that are free, that are wonderful. We'll send you the list. We want everybody to have help. Personal responsibility, and this is where I tell parents, you know, I hate to tell you, but you adopted them or you had them, they're yours. Your child might need things that we can't get in that IEP, but they still need it. Okay, like a private neuropsych. You might need that. You guys are being given a gift here if you have access to that. We talk about our annual partnership. What I do, I take 20 annual cases a year. I can't even handle 21, you know, and these are the people that I'm like a concierge service. They can call me or they can get my staff practically 24 hours. That doesn't mean that I want to get a text message at 10 o'clock at night, you know, or 25 text messages at 10 o'clock at night. When I'm trying to get to sleep, I'll fire a client for that. I'll tell them this is not appropriate, you know, but I will always get back to somebody in less than 24 hours and I'll get that problem solved for an entire year. So, but I can't, I'm just one little woman, one little 63-year-old woman. I can't spread myself any thinner than 20 of those. And I have parents that have had me on the annual and they're like, that's the best money I've ever spent. Can I have you every year? They've got plenty of money. And I tell them, no, I don't want to be helping the same 20 kids. I want to show you how to do it so you don't need me. You know, I always said a good parent teaches a child not to need a parent. A good doctor teaches their patient to take care of themselves so they hopefully don't need a doctor. And my job is to teach my parents how to do this so they don't need me. You know, that's my goal.
I'm going to cut you off really quickly, and I just to answer this one question, and then I might get you connected to this parent again. But this was about the parent who has an 18-year-old daughter who did not graduate and is not successful in her GED classes. And you said that her IEP might be still valuable, but after she dropped out, she was diagnosed with ASD and intellectual disability. Is there
She
a
has
way?
till she's, yes, yes. Get in touch with the ESE director in your county immediately and say, you all should have caught this. Okay, she may not be able to get a regular diploma. There are 3 diplomas. Okay, there are 3 diplomas in Florida. You have a 24 credit diploma, which is, you know, 5, 6, 7 classes a day and all your electives. Okay, that's for a neurotypical child that doesn't have any issues. Then you have an 18 credit diploma, which is mostly the course. You don't have all those electives because maybe that child just can't handle, you know, that many things coming at them at one time. Still a diploma. It still gets you into college. It's no less than a regular diploma. Or you can have a GED, which is still a diploma. You can go to college with a GED. Then you have access points, okay? And that's for a child with a severe intellectual disability. They get to still go to school every day with their non-disabled peers, but they have a watered down curriculum that's easier, that they can access. If they're learning the Constitution, you know, they'll learn the basics, but they may not be tested as deep a level on it as a child that's neurotypical. But here's the benefit. They get till they're 21 or 22 to be in school. Okay, so they get life skills, they get job training, they get all kinds of extra things that go on until they're 21 or 22, depending on their birthday. And you should be able to still access that. Okay, your daughter shouldn't be disadvantaged because they didn't do their job or catch this. So get in touch with the ESE director, carry the report in and say, what are we going to do now?
Well, we are actually we're almost at time. I sent a message to everybody. So if they're wanting the book, send an email to me with your address and then I'll send it all to Jane. I think it's just easier than getting lots of phone calls. Thank you. I'm gonna stop the recording a second. Thank you so much for coming. I know that we've got warriors on this call, lots of families who want to help their kiddos and just not having the information. So having the information, we've just got more people fighting. So thank you very, very much.
Well, you're the most important advocate your child has. God love you. But you know, you got to have